We have major breaking news out of the state of Virginia. This is going to be one of the more important videos that I've ever made on this channel. And if you are a gun owner in America, whether you're in Virginia or whether you're in someplace else, this is the one to watch. It is just so important that you understand what's going on. So I was away for vacation for the last week, right? From the 7th to the 14th, and I was kind of disconnected, right? Trying to get out of all the funk we've been put in because of all this Virginia stuff. And I came back, right? And the AR-15 ban was very well reported on. You probably saw it. I definitely saw it even while I was away, right? I tried to record a video, ended up not in any case. But here's the thing. And this week, right, the 7th to the 14th, right, that legislative week, those 5 days, 31 gun bills had major action, right? So that's either they got passed, they got enrolled to the governor, whatever. 31 gun control bills had major action taken, right, in that 1 week. And here's the point of all this. I'm going to go through all 31 bills, right? If you get bored by this, I don't know what to tell you. This is where the fight is. But here's the important thing to understand. The anti-gunners are doing this because it is boring. Because you don't want to watch someone go through 31 gun bills. That's why they're doing this. They're doing this in a coherent strategy to flood the zone and make it impossible for any normal person to pay attention to. So in this video, as quickly as possible, but still giving detail, I'm going to go through all 31 bills. I prepared a whole document and some graphics and everything. And we're going to talk about what each of these bills are, if they're good, if they're bad. I'll give you a hint. Out of those 31 bills, we have one of them in the good category and 30 of them in the strongly opposed, right, really terrible category. The dystopian takeover that's happened in the month or two since Abigail Spanberg's been the governor of Virginia is historic. It is on historic proportions. And I know, at least from this YouTube channel's perspective, we're not going to let any of this stuff go uncovered. So again, apologies for not making this video, but this stuff is just so important. If you agree, if you think the Second Amendment's important, please do subscribe down below if you are new. It makes such a difference. Each subscription, it's free, but it helps a lot more than you know. Okay, so here we go. 31 gun control bills. Let's start with the only bill right on here that's good, right? I'm gonna give you the positive up front, and then we're gonna go into some of the negatives. And there are some deep negatives. Okay, so this is HB 101. Essentially, this allows handgun permits, right, CHPs, to be submitted online instead of just in written form, right? Obviously, good, right? We're in year 2026. You should be able to submit a handgun permit online. Obviously good. It goes without saying this doesn't do much, but yeah, do I strongly support this bill? Yeah. Am I going to give them credit? Sure, Abigail Spanberg. You can have this, or Spanberg. You can have this win right here, right? You can have this win. Okay, perfect. So this was enrolled and delivered to the governor, and now we have until April 13th for this bill to be signed. So clear win, good. Let's move on. So now that's all the good news out the way. Again, I know we're about to go through 30 other gun control bills. It is important to pay attention because they are trying to distract you and they are trying to flood the zone. Okay, so the first bill out of 30, HB 19. On the scale of bills, this is by no means the worst one. Essentially, this is purchase or transportation of firearms, assault and battery of a family or household member, intimate partner, and it changes the penalty. Essentially, it just expands their existing list of people that aren't allowed to have guns under the Second Amendment. These are for people that have already served their time who are not proven to currently be a danger to themselves or others, right? This could be an offense committed, 30 years ago that wasn't that severe on the scale of things. So that's obviously why. And this has now been enrolled to the governor, and the governor has until April 13th to sign it. The next bill is HB 21, which is one of those sneaky, awful bills. Essentially, this creates a new legal framework, right, that holds firearm manufacturers, dealers and importers, and trade associations like, I guess you could say the NRA to some degree, liable in civil court, so you can sue them for money if they fail to establish reasonable controls around their product. Now, reasonable controls, reasonable. It's a reasonable control. Devil's in the details. It's not that well spelled out, and this is exactly the sort of bill that gets abused to high hell, right? This is exactly the sort of bill. This has now been enrolled to the governor, signed by the president, signed by the speaker, and now it's going to the governor to sign. Again, it's that April 13th date that she has to sign it. All of these are pretty much going to be signed unless there's some extreme surprise and Abigail Spanberger somehow becomes a Second Amendment advocate. I think that's probably unlikely. This is terrible because it exists purely to harm gun manufacturers, right? It exists purely so that, Glock doesn't want to sell into the state of Virginia because they think they could get sued And honestly, they might get sued, right, under this standard. So that's why this bill exists. That's why it's so terrible. The next is Senate Bill 27. This is essentially the same as House Bill 21. It has also been enrolled to the governor, about to be signed. This one is a weird one, Senate Bill 38. So Senate Bill 38 makes it a crime, like you see here, from a person who's prohibited from possessing a firearm to transfer a firearm to another person. Now that's kind of weird, right? Because presumably you'd want to take, if they have a gun, you want them, to be able to get rid of it, right? And that includes for a protective order, right? So protective orders, again, violation of due process, don't require someone to actually be convicted of a crime, right? Often they're put in place because it's seen as a low harm alternative, right? Just an easy stop. You have a protective order, y'all don't see each other anymore, easy, right? Well, now the person who now has a protective order against them is unable to transfer their gun away to even comply with the law, right? Again, these sorts of bills, they're not covered very much, but they are the bread and butter way of just adding hurdles, right? Just adding compliance levels for the transfer, sale, and possession of firearms. So there you go. That's Senate Bill 38. House Bill 40 is next up, and this one is terrible. House Bill 40 is terrible. Again, like I said, you might be thinking, there are a lot of bills. You would be correct. There are a lot of bills. That's the point. So this was now signed, enrolled to the governor, delivered to the governor on March 14th. Governor has till April 13th to sign, veto, or allow it to become law. She will definitely allow it to become law and definitely sign it. Essentially, this makes it a crime, right? A class 5 felony to import, manufacture, sell or transfer or possess any gun that basically is unserialized. So that's your, weapons parts kits. That's your 3D printed guns. This is dystopian, and this is absolutely a shot at the Second Amendment, right? Throughout most of Second Amendment history, it was completely normal. The way you got a gun is you made one, or you bought it from someone who made one, right? There wasn't FFLs, and there weren't these big international companies that produced firearms. So this is absolutely, positively not in line with the Second Amendment. They know it's not in line with the Second Amendment, and they passed it anyway. That's HB 40. This is absolutely the plan, right? We're going to get into a bit more of their broader legislative agenda. But the point is, they want to know where all your guns are so it's easier to take them away. And you'll see a bit later, they've added steps to make it easier for them to take them away. So that's HB 40. Moving on, HB 93, firearm transfer to another person from a prohibited person. Again, you'll see a couple of these. These are companion bills. So there's the House bill equivalent and the Senate bill equivalent, and then they kind of become reconciled and become law. So that's the same thing as Senate SB 38. SB 115 regulates concealed carry handgun permits. This is a really, really interesting one. Pretty insidious, a real big problem. This bill is going to be enrolled, right? The next step for this bill. It's been passed now by the House and the Senate and is now going to be sent to the governor. The interesting thing with this bill is it makes it really hard for people who are out of state or Virginians who, I don't know, like if you live in North Carolina and you work in Virginia, this means that your North Carolina CCW does not automatically work, right? The sheriff's department has final say on whether or not your North Carolina handgun permit will work. And that's really scary, right? Because, in a reasonable regime, maybe they think there's some problem with the online process. I don't know. They think there's some problem. They go through, they check it, no problem. You know that's not what's going to happen. No, this exists to clamp down on all the other states that are giving away CCWs and make it as difficult as possible for you to have one. If you don't live inside of Virginia, for you to have a gun. Next is Senate Bill 160. This is the companion bill to HB 19. Same kind of thing. You get the picture. Moving on. Again, a lot of these are duplicates, but it's important, again, just to cover the scale of what's happening. It's unprecedented, I think, in American law. This is insane. It is absolutely wild. And I hope at least I'm showing you that today. Again, the importance of this is they are trying to flood the zone, and we basically can't let them. We have to know about all these. It is just so important. Okay, SB 173 creates a new Class 1 misdemeanor for knowingly possessing a weapon in any hospital building that provides mental health or developmental disability services. So this is a problem, not because the people who are, let's say are mentally disabled to the point where they may be a danger to themselves or others, like in a mental asylum, right? Obviously, those people, if they've been adjudicated a danger to themselves or others, should not be able to have a firearm in keeping with long-standing Second Amendment precedent. The reason this is a problem is this is just softening those targets to people that want to do those people harm, right? Gun-free zones are essentially kill zones, right? If you look at mass shootings, they all pretty much, with almost no exceptions, happen in gun-free zones, right? Because there's no one there to defend them. So what you're essentially saying here is, I don't know, let's say your brother, for whatever reason, has a terrible mental condition. you can't go into a hospital carrying your firearm. And if someone comes in there and doesn't care about the law and wants to do you harm, it's just open season, right? They can do whatever they want. And that's just terrible. Really terrible. Again, this is a class 1 misdemeanor, so it is, of course, a serious crime. This has now been enrolled to the governor, and she's going to sign it, no doubt. HB 217. This is the big one. This got all the press attention, right? Creates a class 1 misdemeanor for importing, selling, manufacturing, purchasing, or transferring an assault firearm as defined in the bill, as well as large capacity ammunition feeding devices. I believe the final number was 15 for rounds. You can check me on that. But it's gone from 10 to 15. In any case, obviously this one's ridiculous. This isn't just an AR-15 ban, right? This is a quote-unquote assault pistol ban. This is a ban on almost all firearms that a normal person would go around carrying. This is one of the most significant gun bills we've ever seen passed in the state of Virginia. Really, probably the most significant gun control bill that has been passed in the history of the state of Virginia. And it is just so dystopian. It has now passed again. You can see the timeline there, and is now moving to enrollment, moving to the governor, and she's going to sign it. Right, this is one that's 100% going to be signed. This disarms literally millions of Americans, and it's just terrible. These are the exact kind of devices you'd want for defense against tyranny, right? Which is the whole point of the Second Amendment. And also for self-defense, right? These are absolutely valid self-defense weapons. Even if, right, the Second Amendment didn't protect these, you should want citizens to be able to purchase and acquire these firearms. And again, there's effectively no grandfather clause, right? Because it's not like, the Hughes Amendment where you still have these guns around, you can transfer them. No, you cannot transfer them. If you have one of these guns, you're stuck with it. You basically can't do anything with it. Just an absolute terrible bill. And again, the reason they passed this at the same time as they passed all these other bills is because they wanted a video like this and kind of not happen, right? This just takes too long to talk about, just takes too long to explain. And that is the whole point of their strategy here. Just terrible. Just terrible stuff. HB 299, again, the companion of the mental health bill. Sorry, the mental health hospital bill, which was HB 173. So yeah, also we already talked about that, but again, really bad. Obviously, it's literally just setting up people, the most vulnerable people, from being able to be defended by someone who is there and cares about them. So just evil, just absolutely awful and evil. HB 272. This is another one about. This is kind of an uninteresting one, but just restricts the exemption that allows concealed handgun permit holders to carry firearms in state-owned buildings. Again, it's kind of crazy, right? Because this includes public university buildings, which last time I checked is literally one of the biggest hit zones for mass shooters. It's kind of the place where if you're a teacher that goes and works in there every day, we probably should actually force you to have a gun. And this makes it illegal, makes it, is it a felony? I believe it's a felony. And this has now been delivered to the governor to sign, and it will get signed. HB 348, storage of firearms in a residence where a minor or persons prohibited from possessing a firearm is present. This is an interesting one too. So I want to talk a bit just for a second about safe storage laws. I know, by the way, I'm trying to get through this as quickly as possible. I'm sure I already have comments telling me to slow down, telling me to stop talking. But I know YouTube, I know a lot of people have already clicked off this video. So I'm really trying to stay focused here. But essentially, this causes safe storage laws. I believe it requires you to store that gun and ammo separate and obviously unloaded. These are incredibly ineffective laws. Incredibly ineffective laws. And they also cause a lot of problems. So like, for instance, you can't have your gun, in the drawer of your nightstand while you're sleeping because it's not readily controlled by you. So this obviously is ridiculous. The other point is that they make a lot of these rules so onerous that if you are in a residence where a minor is present, right? It kind of, minor or prohibited person, but like, let's say you're a dad, right? It makes you pretty much not able to defend your family. And if that's not evil, I don't know what is. It's disgusting. So if I'm a dad, right, I can't store a firearm in my house, essentially, like let's say in the drawer in my nightstand, unless I fulfill all these requirements. Here's the problem. If I'm sleeping and someone breaks into my house, you think I'm going to have time to go to the gun safe, type in a bunch of codes, find the magazine, it's not going to happen. You're essentially making fathers not be able to defend their kids, and it's just another disgusting, evil law. Okay, next is SB 364. This is kind of a boring one, and it's one of the least significant, I would say, but in a grander scale, it may actually be the most significant. Essentially, this causes the state to actually be able to essentially directly fund anti-gun groups. And make no mistake, that's what this is going to do. Again, deeply evil law. Your tax money will be going to fund organizations that literally want your civil liberties, repealed. SB 496 is makes it a class 4 misdemeanor for leaving a handgun unsecured in an attended vehicle. So here's the thing. A lot of what the current things that you consider to be like a manner of safely storing a gun in an unattended vehicle, under many of these laws aren't. So there was the classic example, right, of the sheriff deputy of San Diego. There's the classic example of the sheriff deputy of San Diego making this detailed video about how to store the gun, and he was wrong, right? A lot of these laws are super convoluted. It requires you to like lock a lockbox, lock the box to something else, have a lock on the box itself, have the connector between the box and the vehicle locked. No one's gonna do that. This essentially stops you from putting a gun in your car and transporting it around. Deeply evil, deeply depraved. SB 626. Again, sorry if I'm going too fast, but I'm just trying to make sure we get through all of these. Carrying a firearm or explosive material within the Capitol building. This is the companion bill to SB 272. Same kind of idea. We've already talked about this. This is going to be signed, obviously, by the governor. SB 643 is one of the most sweeping ones, other than the AR-15 or assault weapons ban, right? Because that one goes very, very, very broad. This essentially does a couple things. First, it bans anyone under the age of 21 from purchasing any firearm at all, in essence. And it creates a permit to purchase regime, right? So you need a permit to purchase a gun. And the permitting stuff is just crazy. So the state police can charge whatever fees they feel cover their cost in processing the permit application. You know they're going to have fun with that one. And it can take as long as 45 days to issue the permit, which is really not long enough if you need a gun for, a self-defense issue, like there's been someone harassing you, stalking you, whatever. This also means that you have to pay for training classes, and I believe it removes the 1 month exemption, one handgun a month exemption by CHP holders. So this also limits your ability to purchase guns. It is absolutely draconian, absolutely insane. And again, they are lumping all these bills in at the same time to distract you. This, by the way, has now, they essentially now have to go into a conference, and if that's passed, it'll go to the governor's desk, and it will get passed, and it will go to the governor's desk, and yeah, that will probably take effect. HB 702 is a really, really scary one. So on the face of it, this law isn't that crazy. So essentially, it authorizes county, city, and town law enforcement agencies to create policies and programs for firearm buybacks or give back events. So under this current law, right, their authority is limited. They cannot make you sell your gun at a buyback or a give back. There's two super scary problems about this. The first is every single municipality must have a buyback or give back system. So they must have some way to essentially enact a gun buyback or gun give back. The reason this is so scary is twofold. Firstly, this is exactly what you would do to lay the groundwork for a mandatory gun buyback. And make no mistake, that is what they want to do. The second reason this is scary is because the actual, buyback or give back process is not admissible in court as evidence. So essentially, I can rob you, take your gun, and then I have an easy way of selling it to the government for cash where I know I won't get caught. Really, really terrible, scary stuff. HB 702, terrifying bill. Again, I hope you're finding this video interesting. It is just so important, and I can't stress how insane this is. Remember, this is all in the last week, right? So this is not a month of bills. This is not a year of bills. This is not a decade of bills. This is 1 week. 1 week. Okay, HB 727 prohibits the carrying of assault firearms in public places, including certain semi-automatic centerfire rifles, pistols, and shotguns, or any firearm modified to fire as one. Essentially, this is a public carry ban, right? Essentially stops you from carrying most firearms that you'd want to carry in public. This has now been enrolled and delivered to the governor. She's going to sign it, and you will essentially not be able to carry most of the firearms you'd want to carry in public places. Again, the right to keep and bear arms. Well, they've already targeted the keep as far as assault firearms go. This is targeting the bear. Just obviously anti-Second Amendment, obviously terrible, ridiculous stuff. Okay, HB 749. This is a similar bill that we already had. This is essentially the assault weapons ban law. This is just the Senate version, and a couple changes were made, but yeah, this is essentially the same thing. HB 871. This is also the House equivalent to SB 348, which is the safe storage law, right? In a place where a minor or prohibited persons resides. HB 901 is essentially their red flag laws. So again, we want to talk about due process. We want to talk about civil liberties. They don't care. You know, and I know that red flag laws are essentially just an erosion on that. They can basically take your guns with no due process, no full trial, no right to face your accuser whenever they want to. Just terrifying stuff. This has been enrolled and delivered to the governor, and the governor is till April 13th. Again, that's the operative date, to sign, veto, or allow it to become law. She's going to do this. The point is to make the process, the punishment. You could be innocent. They're going to take your guns. It's just terrible. HB 909 is another sensitive places restriction, another gun-free zone. It extends the existing ban on firearms within 100 feet of polling places to also cover satellite absentee voting locations. The problem with this is, okay, voting locations, whatever. It's, once a year, whatever. What's the big deal? Again, it's terrible, but it's understandable. Why they'd want to do that. But yeah, this is just crazy. This means that in-person absentee voting locations also have the 100-foot radius. The problem with this is you don't necessarily know where those absentee voting locations are necessarily. And you walk within 100 feet, you're just going for a jog with, a jog with your dog. What? They're going to get you. You are now a criminal. And yeah, the governor's going to sign this one too. By the way, if you're still sticking with me, please do let me know. If you found this video interesting, please do let me know. I know this is a lot of material to cover. Like I've said before, that is the point. That is what they're trying to do. HB 916 is actually kind of neutral. It just kind of changes the training requirements to get a concealed handgun permit, a CHP. This one's actually fine. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, it's actually kind of okay. So we have another minor win there. HB 969, again, the minor wins are not adding up, definitely when compared to everything we've lost. But HB 969 directs the Department of Criminal Justice Services to convene a work group to develop policy and legislative recommendations addressing firearm violence. Basically, this is just going to produce more gun control laws. That's what the point of this is. This is a bill to direct another organization to just produce more gun control laws. Just terrible. And it's going to bear fruit, right? Realistically, we're going to see even more stuff coming down the line unless the Supreme Court really takes a beating. This is one of the most egregious, not this law in particular, just this whole slate of laws, things I've ever seen in terms of affront to civil liberties, and they are just getting away with it, right? Right now, they are just getting away with it. That's just the reality on the ground. We're almost getting there. Thank you for watching this, by the way. HB 1015 is an interesting one. So this creates a new a prohibited persons list for people convicted of misdemeanor hate crimes. So that's assault and battery, and other sort of crimes motivated by race, religion, color, national origin, sex, pregnancy, childbirth, disability, sexual orientation, and stuff like that. Now, the problem with this is oftentimes people will take plea deals, right? Let's say they are facing a big sentence. And instead of taking that sentence, the person says, okay, fine, we'll plea it down to a misdemeanor. You don't even need to serve a day in jail, right? And I would take the law, okay, I don't serve a day in jail, whatever, right? Sign it, cool. Even though I'm innocent, right? A lot of innocent people take that deal, not knowing that now they would be deprived of their rights. And so essentially that's what this does. It dilutes the requirement, right? Which before was a felony, right? Now it dilutes it to a crime where you could not have spent a day in jail. And now you're prohibited for the rest of your life from owning a firearm, right? Again, this is a really difficult one to argue just because of the language, how strong language is, a hate crime. But realistically, there is a large swath of people that have pled down these things, did not spend a day in jail, didn't do anything crazy, that now are covered by this and can never own a gun for the rest of their life. HB 1071 requires threat assessment teams at public K-12 schools and public universities to receive specific training on substantial risk orders. Essentially, this law is not that bad in and of itself, but it ties into the broader red flag law framework. So that's essentially what it is. It's not itself that big of a problem. It's actually probably a good idea, but because it ties those red flag laws deeper into the law, that's kind of what creates the problem there. SB 109 requires school boards to notify parents annually about the safe storage of prescription drugs and firearms in the home. Basically, this is a reasonable law on the face of it, but realistically, this is going to be used for anti-gun messaging, so it's just something to watch out for. If this was passed by like Texas, I'd be like, okay, whatever, no problem. But because it's passed by this regime, I think we all have and should have alarm bells ringing. SB 495 is the Senate companion to HB 901. Same kind of thing, red flag laws, just terrible. You already know what it is. HB 201 is the House companion to SB 109. We just talked about that one. And that's all of them. I am not going to hold you too much longer, but I want you to understand what it is we just went through. We just went through this week in gun control in Virginia. This is not this week in nationwide gun control. Even if it was this year in nationwide gun control, it's insane. That's not what this is. That's not what this is. This is this week in Virginia gun control. How insane is that? How insane is that? The reality is, what Virginia is doing right now is unconscionable. And all this stuff is going to start getting signed into law, and I'll cover it when it does, but it's going to start getting signed into law over the coming weeks. And realistically, if I had to bet, they're going to do it in a batch like they've done before. I have no idea if this video is going to do well or not. I have no idea. The reality is, though, this video is not as appealing as a major breaking news, right? We have huge news. Virginia has passed an AR-15 ban, right? And that's why they're setting this up. They're sneaking in, what was it, 30 other or 29 other gun control measures under that one banner. So you look at the big headline and you say, okay, we can fight this. But you miss everything underneath. That's what the point of this is. It's terrible. It's despicable. And the reality is, it just might work. I hope I've given you some sense. If you are new here, please do subscribe. It makes a very, very big difference to my work. Yeah, give me some sense. Did you finish the video? Were you able to make it through? If you were, I mean, that's incredible. But most people don't have that attention span anymore, especially not people in my generation. That's why it's my mission to make the Second Amendment the forefront of people's mind for people under the age of 25. And that's what I do both on campus and on YouTube. But it's hard to do. It's hard to do. When this much stuff happens in this short a time, you have to think they're trying to distract you. And it is just despicable. It is just awful. And we don't have a very good response to it. If you're in Virginia, please do stay safe. Please do let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video, I'll make more of them. If you want me to slow it down, take even longer, I'll do that too, but I don't know how much longer I can take. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you did enjoy. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.